Hey guys, it's Mike here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Season 1 of My Hero Academia. Based on the manga created by Kohei Horikoshi, My Hero Academia is set in a world where roughly 80% of the human population has developed some sort of superhuman ability known as a quirk. As a result, people began to use these powers for both good and evil, and as villains emerged to threaten the world, heroes also rose up to fight them, and this propelled heroes to become the dominant profession in the world. The story follows Izuku Midoriya, also known as Deku, who is a quirkless human. However, he nonetheless desires to become a hero and stand as a symbol of hope and justice like the world's most famous hero, All Might. My Hero Academia is a series that I've heard many people describe as great. However, going into the show, I knew very little about it. I hadn't read up much on it, and I've made a conscious decision to avoid spoilers, as I do with most series, and I feel like this always affords me my best viewing experience, as I can be taken on the journey the creators wanted me to see in an organic way. And after watching this season, I think that was for the best. Now, there will be spoilers in this review, so if you want to watch it without being spoiled, feel free to come back to this review after that. Now, with that being said, let's get into this review. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and enable notifications so you can see all of my content right away when it comes out. My Hero Academia is a show that started out rather unassuming. We follow the story of a timid boy, Deku, as one of the few people in the world who didn't get some sort of power. His classmates bully him, especially Bakugo, who serves as his biggest opposition at first. We get into Deku's backstory, such as his inspiration for wanting to be a hero. He wants to be like All Might, a symbol of justice, and is such a big fan of him and his work that he watched a video of All Might's first heroic appearance over and over again on loop. But soon we discover how he found out that he wouldn't have a quirk due to some funny medical jargon about his pinky toe not having the right number of joints. And it's at this point where we see that Deku's world is crushed, as he desperately wanted to be a hero. So after learning this information, he could have given up on his goal, but instead still desires to become a hero and takes proactive steps like studying other heroes and documenting their quirks in his journal. This is when he is attacked by a monstrous quirk user and is saved by All Might himself. Not too long after this, All Might's secret is revealed, as he reverts back to his smaller, weaker, and true form. All Might reveals that he uses his quirk to power and bulk himself up, and the smile he always has on his face is like those muscles, more of a persona or a facade. However, due to a previous fight, All Might was seriously injured, and could only use his powers for a few hours without spurting blood and needing to revert back to his smaller form. This is when Deku asks him if he could still become a hero without a quirk, which at first All Might tells him no. However, after Bakugo is attacked by the same monster as before and Deku rushes to save him, All Might was inspired to push past his own limits and intervene. It was at this point that All Might revealed to Deku the secret of his power, known as One for All, which is a quirk that was handed down from person to person and improved each time. And now, because of Deku's bravery and willpower, All Might will pass it down to him. And this is where the real plot of the arc begins, as Deku trains under All Might to improve his body, getting stronger and growing more determined before eventually having One for All passed on to him. And this is done in a funny way, as rather than through some kind of ritual or over-the-top way, All Might gives Deku a strand of his hair and tells him that he has to eat it. This all happens before the entrance exams for UA High School, which is the top hero academy in Japan and the titular Hero Academia, where Deku and other hero prospects must brave difficult trials in order to gain entry into the academia. It first begins with a written examination, but the more important and hardest part is the practical exam. In this part, the students must enter a replica city and use their quirks to fight a litany of robot enemies. With the more of them they destroy, the more points they receive. And this part of the season really serves to introduce a number of new characters with their own cool abilities. First, we have the other classmates. Of course, Deku and his rival Bakugo are there, but we're also introduced to characters such as Tenya Ida, a proper student from a heroic family with the power to run at super speeds. We also meet Ochi Ochako Uraraka, who has the ability to control objects with her mind so long as she has touched them. And they find cool ways to showcase these characters and their powers during the exam. However, Deku fails to secure any points during this section, but just before the time comes to an end, he saves Ochako from a giant 0-point robot by using the power of One for All. However, due to him using this power for the first time and the state of his body, he suffers backlash, breaking both of his legs and his arm in the process. However, he still manages to pass the exams due to meeting all of the heroic criteria the examiners look for. After this is when the classes begin, and we're introduced to more characters, such as a student named Shoto Todoroki, who is able to skip the exam based upon recommendations. His powers are that one half of his body can control heat, while the other can control cold. And this makes for some very cool and impressive feats of power. You can tell he's already on a higher level than the rest of the class from the beginning. And we're also introduced to the teachers, such as Eraserhead, who gets a lot of focus in this arc and can turn off someone's quirk just by looking at them. And 13, who looks like an astronaut and who has powers similar to a black hole. We also discover that All Might has become a teacher himself and will use his experience to teach the next generation of heroes, as well as to guide Deku. And this is where the plot of the arc truly takes off, as Deku and his fellow students begin their training at UA High. And this training is made up of a number of different tests and simulated scenarios. There's a team battle, for instance, which sees Deku and Ochako as the heroes take on Bakugo and Ida, who serve as the villains. During this battle, in the midst of the action, light is shed upon Deku and Bakugo's shared history. How as a child, Bakugo first learned of his power, which filled him with a massive sense of pride and arrogance, and how he lauded it over Deku, especially after learning of his lack of quirk. Bakugo even gave him the name Deku to constantly remind him of how weak he was. In many ways throughout the season, it feels like Bakugo is being set up more as a villain than a hero. However, as Deku and Ochako win their battle, Izuku claims that he will keep the name Deku because Deku is the name of a hero. This is really the kind of action I like, where it not only furthers the story, but also develops the characters as people, and we certainly see a lot of that throughout this season. Deku himself also receives a great deal of development throughout this arc. Starting as a small, physically weak teenager who was constantly bullied for his lack of quirk, he continued to push himself toward his goal, and through his training with All Might, improved his body and gained a power to fight back against those with natural quirks. The way he fights, using his head in battle, reminds me a lot of Batman, and how he utilizes One for All in various ways that will deal less damage to his body is really cool to watch. As for One for All itself, it's a quirk that allows users to stockpile power, granting them immense strength and speed, and in All Might's case, allows him to bulk up considerably. The user can also pass this quirk onto someone voluntarily. It's a pretty cool enhancement ability, and in some ways it reminds me of the Avatar state from Avatar: The Last Airbender. No, not that awful Shyamalan one. And this power is executed in a cool way throughout the season. After Deku shows off his tenacity and the use of One for All during the courses, he actually becomes popular among his classmates, and is even elected the class representative. This was a nice moment that showed his development throughout the season, and showed he's in a very different place from when it started. However, Deku passes on the title to Ida, as he is really more fitting of that role, and Ida is one of those students, much like Ochako, who becomes a member of Deku's core group of friends. Now, he's overly proper and chastises Deku on his manners, but also comes from the famous Ida hero family, and seeks to be a hero like his brother Ingenium. We get some cool moments from him during this season, although it's only really a taste of what's to come in the future. However, after this moment of happiness is where the true threat of this season really emerges, as the UA students are taken to a large dome with various simulated environments designed to run training scenarios. This is when a dark portal opens and a group of villains emerges to threaten the students and teachers alike. Their leader is named Tomura Shigaraki, and he is the leader of a group known as the League of Villains. Shigaraki's quirk is that of decay, which makes him a very dangerous person. The one who created the portal is known as Kurogiri, whose body is largely intangible save for a core. Both of their goals are to kill All Might, who is the symbol of peace and the reason they invaded UA. Shigaraki in particular is totally opposed to the viewpoint of heroes and seeks to spread instability throughout society. The other most powerful member is known as Nomu, who is a massive hulking man who has facial features of a bird and an exposed brain. However, unlike the others, he is a mindless slave who is created to match and defeat All Might. This is where things get more serious, as the mob of villains seek to wipe out the students and the teachers, and the preceding action really allows everyone to show off their abilities in cool ways. For example, we see Deku and the frog hero Froppy team up with Mineta to fight a bunch of seafaring villains in an ocean section of the dome. Deku uses his brain along with his power and theirs to overcome the villains, and in a really cool moment uses a super-powered snap to create a whirlpool that swallows the villains up. And as the villains appear to be overwhelming the available heroes, Ida uses his quirk to run and alert those back at the academy. And as Nomu has a racer head on the ground near death, All Might makes his heroic entrance and faces off against him. However, the two of them are evenly matched in strength, and Kurogiri places All Might in a bad position. What's worse is that All Might's time limit is slowly ticking down. This is when the students intervene to help, as Todoroki and Bakugo fend off the villains. However, when the fight resumes, All Might is at a disadvantage, as his time is almost up and his wound from Nomu has made him weaker. Despite this, he chooses to fight alone to show that he is a symbol of peace and justice, which leads to perhaps the best fight of the season, as All Might goes beyond 100% of his power, belting Nomu with a series of punches and finally hitting him so hard with a punch that it sends him flying through the ceiling and off into the distance like Team Rocket blasting off again. However, this fight left All Might on the edge of reverting back to his weaker form. Shigaraki and Kurogiri sense this weakness and attack, but Deku jumps in at the last moment to defend All Might. Just as Deku is about to hit Kurogiri's core body with a powered-up smash, Shigaraki's hand emerges from the dark haze on a trajectory for Deku's face. However, just before they make contact, a bullet fires through Shigaraki's hand as the pro heroes arrive to fight back the villains. And as they're overwhelmed, the villains retreat, but not before Shigaraki is shot several times through his limbs in a pretty cool and unexpected moment. As the villains re-emerge in their hideout, they discuss their failings to a TV, which is shown to be audio only. And from the TV, the voices of their true masters respond. And one of the voices tells Shigaraki that he must serve as the face of this organization and inspire fear among the masses, while he, the real leader, remains in the shadows. The season comes to a close as everyone heals up from the battle. As All Might and Deku recover, All Might reveals that the amount of time he can use his power has once again shortened, which narratively creates some sort of consequence for him using this great level of power, and doesn't just make it a constant get-out-of-jail-free card. All Might discusses how hard the students fought and says that no first years before have had to face such a threat, which taught them how to survive and made them learn what it takes to be a pro, and he sees them all becoming great heroes. Season 1 ends as Deku meets up with his friends, and his voiceover says that despite this being a bad event, the worst has yet to come, as a shadowy ninja-esque figure is revealed, who gazes upon a city from atop a skyscraper with a maniacal look. So that was My Hero Academia Season 1, and I have to say that this show is really great so far. It has some really thought out action sequences, an interesting setting, cool powers, and strong characters who get some real development throughout. The series in many ways is reminiscent of a Togashi story, like Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter, as well as a little bit of One Punch Man, but not in a way that feels too derivative. And the animation, scene direction, and musical score are great and really make these moments stand out even more. Another thing I didn't mention enough of is that the series also has a lot of comedy and wacky elements, such as quirks like Mineta's with his sticky balls, or people that look like anthropomorphic animals much like in Dragon Ball. Another fun aspect is all of the references in the show, such as to Avatar: The Last Airbender, many Western comics, and especially especially Star Wars, as many of the locations seem to have names with Star Wars puns, so fans of these properties are bound to get some enjoyment out of that. As far as any real negatives, not all of the characters get a ton of development throughout this season, particularly the villains. However, given how many characters are in the show, and at only 13 episodes, it does a good job of making us care about many of them. And ultimately, this season is relatively short. However, as a first season, which often exists to test the waters and popularity, I think it does a great job within those confines. Also, as far as what language I watched it in, I decided to go with the dub for this anime, which was done by Funimation. I think the voice actors did well with the material, and from what I've heard, it's largely accurate, which is something I look for in a dub in addition to strong voice performances. But in conclusion, My Hero Academia Season 1 is a great start to a series that has a lot of potential. It served in a large way as the intro to this world, its characters, and its interesting powers, and it left off this series with a lot of promise, which I feel the following seasons have really lived up to, but I'll be discussing those more in depth in the future. I'm going to give My Hero Academia Season 1 an 8 out of 10. So have you guys seen My Hero Academia Season 1? Also, what are some of your favorite moments? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video and want to see more, then make sure to subscribe, enable notifications, and stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe, enable those damn notifications.